An EU delegation is in Ukraine for 2 days of talks. Kiev expected to press for further financial support from its Western allies and for peacekeepers to patrol its war-torn east. The summit is the first since last year's association agreement between the two parties. The EU is demanding reforms to clean up Ukrainian politics and business. Well, for more, I'm joined by our international affairs editor, Douglas Herbert. Good afternoon to you, Doug. 10 months have passed since that association agreement we were talking about just there. As far as the Ukrainian leadership is concerned, you could say they've got bigger concerns, really.
Absolutely. Look, Petro Poroshenko coming into this meeting, he has a big wish list, but he's also realistic, pragmatic. He knows he's not going to get a lot of it. You just mentioned one of them. One of them is he would love, at the top of that wish list, he would love to have EU peacekeepers on the ground in the east of Ukraine. Right now, you just have the OSCE observers. They're unable, in many cases, they say, to fulfill their mission. There are a lot of areas they just can't really get into. So Poroshenko would love to have EU peacekeepers. He's not going to be getting them. One of the reasons he's not going to be getting them is because the EU is on tenterhooks, to use one term, not to do anything in any way, shape, or form that might either offend Putin or give Russia, because, look at the situation here. Russia, a lot of these rebels are outwardly sort of doing this in the interests of pro-Russian, in Putin's interests. They don't want to do anything that will offend Putin. They don't want to do anything that will give Putin a pretext, a reason to turn around, point the finger, and say to Petro Poroshenko, look, you're violating the ceasefire. And for him, putting EU peacekeepers in there is a formula for not abiding by the terms of this ceasefire. So he's going to ask for, obviously, some help facing that insurgency in the east. Unlikely for now to get a lot of it. Financial support, he might do a little better. He's already gotten a little over $1.5 billion from Europe. He'd like a couple billion more. What the EU leaders are doing at this point, and you sort of alluded to this, is saying, you show us the reforms, we'll show you the money. So it's a little bit of tough love here. And one of the things they really want Petro Poroshenko to do is show that he is trying to implement, pulling out all stops possible to implement the Minsk agreement, the ceasefire accord, which as of this hour right now looks like it's being violated pretty regularly, even if some places it's holding, violated in a lot of strategic pockets regularly throughout the eastern region. Very, very difficult. And the constitutional reform issue, also called for in the Minsk agreement, proving to be a really big obstacle because basically the Europeans are saying you should decentralize your politics, give more power to the east, especially Donetsk, Luhansk regions. The problem Petro Poroshenko and some Ukrainians might have with that is that they fear that by doing that, that is the thin end of the wedge. You're giving power basically to people who do not recognize your authority in the first place, and they will seize that and run with it. And they want outright independence, a lot of these rebels. They don't want broader autonomy.
In terms of those reforms that the Europeans want to see, crack down on corruption and the like, some headway has been made, but I'm guessing probably not enough as far as
Not enough for the Europeans yet. Listen, like I said, they're still waiting, show us the reforms, we'll show you the money. But that's not to say the Ukrainians have just been sitting there doing nothing, idle. They've been already passed an anti-corruption law in recent weeks, which could provide a framework for cracking down, a broader crackdown on corruption. They sacked a big regional governor recently, which some see as also a signal that there's going to be a broader crackdown against the oligarchs, unlike in Russia, where, as we know, Vladimir Putin has defanged the power of the oligarchs. He did it a little over a decade ago, so they do not hold sway really as much anymore, almost not at all in the Russian economy. That's not the case in Ukraine, where a few extremely rich men do control things and call the shots. One of them is a man named Rinat Akhmetov. We've talked about him a lot. He has steel, mining, thermoelectric generating assets, a telecom asset throughout eastern Ukraine. He also controls a lot of miners. We've seen that he can almost use the miners as almost like a personal army. He could call them out onto the streets against the separatists at times, but now that he's being scrutinized by the government in Kiev, might he turn against Poroshenko? Very difficult tightrope act that Petro Poroshenko is playing here, because in the name of fulfilling the EU's demands to crack down against endemic corruption, go after those oligarchs, he might be making some very powerful enemies, because we don't know. Could Akhmetov one day turn around and go to Vladimir Putin for support?
Douglas Herbert, thanks very much for joining us.